Hello everyone and welcome to the week 9 of NBTEL course in pharmacognosy and phytochemistry. This week we are seeing a beautiful set of compounds called as resins. Resins, if you remember, are compounds we defined in our first lecture as oxidation products of terpene. So terpenes, whenever the plant synthesizes them, gets oxidized gradually, gets metabolized and get converted into a very amorphous polymeric substances. These substances are often referred to as resins. In this session, we will dwell more into resin combinations called as oleogum resins. Now, as the name indicates, oleogum resins contain oil, gum and resin. So it's a mixture of three ingredients in a varying concentration. The oils essentially contain your volatile oil and are rich in terpenes. These are responsible for granting a good aroma to the oleoresin substances. Now going to the second ingredient of oleogum resin, and that is gum. This is basically the carbohydrate component that comes out from the plant. So in addition to your resin, you will also have your carbohydrate components. Now this carbohydrate components render one more important property to these substances, and that this property is emulsifying property. Oleogum resins naturally contain oil in them, that is your essential oil, and this carbohydrates in presence of water will emulsify those oil, and as a result when this oleogum resins are triturated with water, they get converted into emulsions. So if your resin forms emulsion with water, mostly it's a resin combination, that is your oleogum resin. Now let us see few examples of oleogum resins. So today we see examples such as asafoetida, gugul and myrrh. The first one is a very familiar name in our kitchen, and that's your asafoetida, often referred to as hing, and because of its aroma it is also referred to as your devil's dung. So asafoetida is nothing but an exudation which comes out from rhizomes of different ferula species. This includes your Ferula asafoetida, Ferula foetida, Ferula rubricaris. Now apart from that, there are various other Ferula species from which your oleogum resin is also procured. Now this resin is principally procured from your Iran and Afghanistan. So the chief producers of hing or asafoetida are your Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan. In India also it is grown to a certain extent in Kashmir region. So how is this hing made, or how is this asafoetida produced? Now asafoetida is produced in ducts which are present in the cortical region of your asafoetida rhizome. Now this asafoetida rhizome, in order to get this particular oleogum resin out from that, is often decapitated. So what happens is, in the cortical region there are numerous what are referred to as your schizolysigenous and schizogenous cavities. Eventually they kind of merge to get what is called as schizolysigenous cavities. So your asafoetida is secreted in the schizolysigenous cavities. It is already there, you just have to cut and get it out. So what is done is, the plant is grown, sometimes even taken from the wild sources, sometimes cultivated. So if when the plant is about 3 to 4 years old, the rhizomes of it become as big as your carrots. So they are very big and thick, and so is the stem. So if you just see like a asafoetida plant, you might have a rhizome like your carrot, and then you have a stem. So what is made is, a cut is made above the ground, just above the rhizome in the stem, and all your oleogum resin starts oozing out like a milky white liquid. Now once it oozes out like a milky white liquid, what happens is, it is prone to getting contaminated with dirt or grime because it's very close to the ground. So as a result, what is done is this is often covered with plastic or sometimes even the leaves of the same plant. A dome shaped structure is created, and this resin, whatever is secreted, is protected from the wind and dust. Once when the resin oozes out and it's kind of little dried up, that time this dome is lifted and the resin is scraped. Now this process doesn't stop there. So the next time what is done is, now once this resin is or oleogum resin is kind of scraped off, a next cut is given slightly lower. Okay, now what happens is again your schizolysigenous cavities, the resinous ducts are exposed and more of this oleogum resin start exuding out. So it keeps on exuding and this process is repeated till my rhizome gets completely exhausted and the drug is no longer coming out of it. So in some cases, it just not only rhizomes, in some cases even stems are cut off to get even what little of resin you can get from the stem part of it. So it's obtained from little stem, it's majorly obtained from the roots and rhizomes also. Once that is done, all the scrapings are dried in the sun. What happens here is the moisture content decreases, a little white color emulsion turns into a dull buff yellowish brown color resinous substance, and you get what is called as asafoetida of your commerce. So you can see here, this is what it dries up to and this is what your asafoetida of commerce looks like. Now you will see that in addition to that, you also get what is called as compound asafoetida. Compound asafoetida is the asafoetida that we use in our culinary. So in your kitchen, if you see in the hinka container, that is what is referred to as compound asafoetida. So what is done thereafter is, after drying, this asafoetida oleogum resin is triturated either with grains or with starch or sometimes even with gum arabic. So much so that it contains 50% of your asafoetida and 50% of your starch and gum arabic or other substances. In that case, it is referred to as compound asafoetida. The reason for doing it is, if you see pure asafoetida, it has a very nasty, strong, alicious odor. But the moment you dilute it, it gives you a pleasant culinary odor. One more additional advantage of compounding asafoetida or preparing compound asafoetida is you get to prepare or you get a free flowing powder which is much more manageable. So what are compounds present in this? Now asafoetida being oleogum resin contains essential oils, that is volatile oils approximately 8 to 16%. Gum 25% and resin, which is the major part, about 40 to 60%. Now if you see hing or asafoetida, it has that strong alicious odor and that is attributed to lot of disulfide and trisulfide containing compounds. So you will see that the flavor of asafoetida, the alicious odor of asafoetida is attributed to presence of bisulfides and trisulfides. These major compounds which attribute or which contribute to the flavor of asafoetida are 2-butyl 1-propenyl disulfide, isomers of it, 1,1-methyl thiopropanyl 1-propenyl disulfide and 2-butyl 3-methyl thioalyl disulfide. So all of the sulfurous compounds are even a kind of essential. So when you heat asafoetida, you get the aroma of it, and that is the sulfurous compound contribute both to the flavor as well as to the aroma of asafoetida. In addition to that, it contains resin alcohols. This includes your resinotanol, asaresinotanol, ferruniol. So you can see here ferruniol is chiefly your terpene derivative. So if you remember your terpenes, they are methyl, that is dimethyl allyl derivatives, and you can clearly understand the isoprene groups which are contributing to it. Now when it comes to this part, from your previous session, you know that this part is contributed by your phenyl propanoid moiety. chiefly originating from your phenylalanine. So you have your resin. In addition to that, you have other phenylpropanoid compounds like your umbellic acid, ferulic acid. Now this umbellic acid, ferulic acid are present, and sometimes you have your umbelliferone, which is a byproduct of what you call it as cyclization of umbellic acid. So umbelliferone is a coumarin derivative which is found when your umbellic acid cyclizes. Now this is often done, naturally it is present in combination as esters with ferulic acid, but once it is hydrolyzed, your ferulic acid is kind of separated from your umbellic acid and you can get your umbelliferone. Now this is also used in detection and identification of your asafoetida. Apart from that, there are numerous other compounds, sesquiterpenes, umbelliferyl ethers, and many of them contain or mostly form ethers with monocyclic or bicyclic terpenoidal moieties. Now let's go to the chemical evaluation. First thing, it being an oleogum resin gives you emulsion when water is added because of the carbohydrate component as well as oil which is naturally present in the plant. The next thing is, because it is resinous in nature, if you treat your freshly opened or fractured surface of asafoetida drug or even asafoetida powder with a drop of concentrated sulfuric acid, you will see immediately it turns reddish brown, and later on the sulfuric acid will char it to almost blackish coloration. But before that, you will get an intermediate violet coloration. So you will see a gradual change from reddish to purplish and eventually black till all your asafoetida is charred. Now what happens in the third case is, we see what is called as a fluorescence test. You can see here, and that fluorescence is due to the presence of coumarin we just saw, that is your umbelliferone. So umbelliferone is often found in association or is sometimes esterified, and as a result it is important to free it or hydrolyze it first. So what is done is, you take your asafoetida powder and then hydrolyze it. Now to facilitate the hydrolysis, what is done is, you take your asafoetida powder, you take your acid and triturate it in presence of sand. That gives you enough surface area and the hydrolysis is complete. Now once that is done, you filter it and heat it. Now the filtrate also contains the acid, and as a result when you heat it, the process of hydrolysis still continues. Now once that is done, you kind of make the pH alkaline because the coumarin shows a very nice fluorescence in presence of a basic pH. So you neutralize initially the acid, and as the pH goes on towards the basic side, you will get the formation of umbelliferone. This umbelliferone can be seen under UV as a bluish color fluorescence. So you have to view it under UV 365 nanometers to observe this kind of fluorescence. Now going to the applications, the most common application of asafoetida is in a food industry as a condiment and flavoring agents. Compound asafoetida vary in their composition, and you might find them containing anywhere between 10% to 50% of your asafoetida oleogum resin. Now it is also an important ingredient of numerous spice mix, masalas and sauces such as your Worcestershire sauce. Now one interesting application of asafoetida is, it is seen that animals resent, they don't like the aroma of asafoetida, and especially in your veterinary, whenever there is any bandage which is to be tied to your pets because of injuries, they tend to often leak it and tear it off. So what is done is, what they kind of apply a asafoetida spray on this bandage. So pets do not chew those bandage, they kind of repel, and in a way the bandage is kept safe. So not only as an insect repellent, but also to prevent insects from licking their own wounds and bandages, this is also given. Now in Ayurveda, asafoetida or hing powder is recommended for its application such as a digestive aid, antispasmodic and a very good carminative. Now going to the next drug. The next drug is Gugul, Gugul is also oleogum resin which is obtained by making incisions, in this case bark of a plant called as Commiphora mucul. Now it belongs to the family Bruceraceae. Now this plant is distributed throughout in India but majoritarily grown in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Assam and Karnataka. Now this occurs wild but it's cultivated. Now this plant grows at a height somewhere between 4 to 10 feet, but it can be remarkably observed because of one feature. So if you see this plant carefully, you will barely see any leaves on it. So mostly you will see the stem which is green and does the photosynthetic function, and as a result these barks are kind of grayish, papery, and if you remove the bark, the inner part of stem is often seen as green. It's only during the monsoons or few seasons you will see tiny leaves on it, but otherwise most of the time you will see this plant bearing, not bearing any leaves. Now when the incision is made, you get a yellowish color, milky resinous compound coming out, often referred to as your Gugul resin, which on drying appears something like this, which is hard, little sticky and has a balsamic odor, generally collected in the winter seasons. So what does this Gugul contain? Now this Gugul is also an oleogum resin, so it contains majority gum and resins and a small quantity of your essential oil. The important compounds of Gugul are referred to as Gugul lipids. Now Gugul lipids is obtained from Gugul resin. So we just saw the resin. That resin is taken, crushed and extracted with organic solvents such as hexane, petroleum ether. Now once you extract it with organic solvents, you will get the lipid soluble ingredients of Gugul, and this is referred to as your Gugul lipid. Gugul lipid is very medicinal and contains compounds such as gugulosterols. Now this sterols range from gugulosterol 1 to 6, and you will also see sitosterol, especially your beta sitosterol, and E and Z gugulosterones. So what you see here is a E gugulosterone. Just convert this and move it to your this form, you get what is called as your Z-gugulosterone. So they are just cis-trans isomers of each other. In addition to Gugul lipids, the oleogum resin also has flavonoids, quercetin and its glycosides, little quantities of ellagic acid and myrcil alcohol. When you want to see the oleaginous or the oil composition, it is very beautifully fragrant. So Gugul resin is even used in incenses because of this fragrant or the volatile oil composition, and this is contributed by your myrcene, alpha pinene, 1,8-cineol and numerous other monoterpenes and sesquiterpene derivatives. Now because of its gugulosterone composition, Gugul has numerous therapeutic attributes. It has been used traditionally in Ayurvedic system of medicine as well as having numerous current day applications. So it is seen that consumption of Gugul significantly lowers the serum triglycerides. This includes your cholesterol, LDLs, VLDL cholesterols, which are often referred to as the bad cholesterols, and it also enhances simultaneously your high density lipids or HDLs, which are also referred to as your good cholesterols. Now in addition to that, it is known to inhibit platelet aggregation, and one reason why Gugul has become famous or sought after again is it is known to stimulate what is called as thermogenesis, that is your heat production, by stimulating your T3, T4 or thyroid system as such. Now because of this thermogenesis, a lot of energy is spent, and as a result, because of the energy is spent, there is a burning of lipids, simultaneously there is a slimming action. So people nowadays take Gugul tablets or capsules for slimming purposes, to take care of their lipomas or to take care of their hyperlipidemia as well. Now in addition to the basic action on the lipids. It is also known to possess astringent, antiseptic, expectorant, even aphrodisiac, demulcent and immunogogue activities. Not only that, the Google resin is reported to be useful in tonsillitis and pharyngitis. It is also recommended for rheumatoid arthritis. In Ayurveda, this resin is often boiled in a specific apparatus called as dole yantra, where it is dissolved in milk and ghee after boiling, and you get what is called as purified or soft gugul, often referred to as shodit gugul, which is devoid of other impurities and much potent as compared to your native gugul resin. Now let's move on to the third example of oleogum resin, and that's your myrrh. Now myrrh is also referred to as Arabian or Somali myrrh, because from the place it is brought in is mostly the Arabian subcontinent, also referred to as myrrha. It's a oleogum resin, again obtained from Commiphora species, but it's obtained from Commiphora molmul or Commiphora absinica. Now this belongs to the same family as your gugul, and that is your Burseraceae. Now this is plant which is more native to the Arabian Peninsula, and often myrrh of commerce comes in from the country like Ethiopia and Somalia. So this myrrh plant is again short plant, and it has a stem, and in the stem you will see the phloem parenchyma and the resin ducts are closely associated. Now what happens is, as the plant matures, they kind of become lysigenous, fuse, and this myrrh resin fills all these ducts. The moment you make an incision, a yellow liquid oozes out of it very spontaneously, and that is what is referred to as your myrrh. So myrrh on drying forms what is called as a reddish brown mass, which is often collected by natives from the wild plants, but nowadays again that is being cultivated for commercial purposes. Now once you have this myrrh, you will see that the outer surface is little powdery brown, but it has a beautiful essence, that is aroma, and it's acrid in nature. Now going to the chemical composition. In terms of its chemical composition, the major part is your gum, and you will have your resins, almost 25 to 40% alcohol soluble resins, and a minor component 7 to 17% of your essentious or volatile oil. Now this contains numerous compounds which belong to the category of furanosesquiterpenes. Now furanosesquiterpenes, in addition to the sesquiterpenoidal part, have furans associated with them. So the main furans which are associated with myrrh include your furanoeudesma 1,3-diene, then you have your landestrine, and you have your curzerin. Now if you see carefully, they are very much analogues of each other. The only difference between furanoeudesma-diene is this. So you will see that in landestrine, what has happened is the aromatization is changed and you get a double bond out here. Whereas what happens in curzerin is you will see that the bond has been broken from here. So it's essentially the same compound but has rearranged to form different derivatives. In addition to that, you have your eudesmanes, elemanes, germacranes, cardienanes, and you have your other compounds also present belonging to your furanosesquiterpenoidal class. In addition to that, the essential component of it includes your alpha, beta as well as gamma bisabolin. It also contains phenolics. These phenolics are also responsible for color of your myrrh, and this includes your pyrocatechin and pyrocatechonic acid. Now other components of resin include your commiphoric acids and your commiferin and hierabromomirols. Now coming to the test of it, you can assess the drug of commerce is given to you as myrrh or not. The first thing is it is an oleogum resin, so the moment you triturate that with water, you should get a emulsion. But as compared to your asafoetida or as compared to your gugul, myrrh being more reddish brown in nature, gradually the color fades, and as you emulsify, you should get a yellow brown emulsion. Not only that, if you see, if you extract myrrh with ether, and this ether, if you take it and treat it with bromine, especially the bromine vapors, you will see that initially it turns red, and subsequently this color changes to purple when you add your nitric acid to this. Okay. In terms of applications, myrrh, because it contains tannins in addition to your uh, resinous compounds, it is given for a lot of wound healing, antiseptic and antibacterial effect. So it's carminative, it's local stimulant, it is antiseptic, it can heal wounds such as your mouth ulcers, and as a result it is often given as topical astringent and used in your tooth powders and mouthwashes. It is also used as an emmenagogue. Now it is also used as a tincture due to its disinfectant properties. Like I said, this is one of the resin which is rich in tannins, and as a result it is very good disinfectant. And extracts of this have been used as fixatives. Now since it's oleogum resin, the resinous parts of it are often solubilized in alcohol. This alcoholic resin extracts increase the viscosity, and as a result they can be used as fixatives in your perfuming industry. So here are a few more references if you wish to read more about these three drugs, and thank you everyone for your patient listening.